because remember, our minds don't like things to be looking very simple and then get a positive result. It's like, surely it can't be that easy. It has to be a complicated algorithm to warrant extracting that. When the reality is the broker knows that and wants you to think that, because the more decisions and things you have to factor in, the more margin for error. So if you have to trade 3 times a day or check the trade every blimmin' hour, right, you would then fall into this category of probably making bad decisions over a long period of time. Over the whole year, you probably won't be that profitable. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Inside the Mind podcast. Recently, we hit the 5th year anniversary on Falcon, and we thought it'd be a great opportunity to myself and the coaches to do a special podcast. We wanted to kind of keep this very raw, open. We get a lot of questions on a regular basis, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to celebrate and really address some important topics in this industry so you can have the most vetted information for your journey. This industry is all about guidance, and you can build up a lot of bad habits and go around a really dangerous road that just leaves you chasing your tail. And we kind of aim to address that in this episode. So we're really looking forward to it. So joined with me is Mr. Abdu and Ibby. How are we, guys?
I'm doing well. Yourself, Ibby, Mark, how are you both?
Very well. Doing great. Apart from my tooth extraction. That's about it. So bear with me, guys. But yeah, so 5 years, it's pretty crazy to even think about that. It's gone by with a blink of an eye, honestly. You know, when you're in the trenches and you're building things. I only literally a couple of days ago took some time to just take a step back and think, wow, 5 years. 5 years is not a small amount of time. It's also not a long amount of time. You know, there's still a lot of things to do. Yeah, so many moments, so many milestones, so many ups and downs. But through all of it, I am pleased to announce that everything from a journal that was actually written down has played out, which is, I would say that's the coolest feeling.
I was going to say, how does that actually feel? You know what I mean? Like, I know there's this one side about writing your goals and doing all these things, but to actually start something and build the infrastructure, and I don't want to say defy all odds, but we know the statistics on businesses and surviving 5 years and all those things are really not good. You know, have you processed it? Are you on the other side of it? Is it kind of still like, has this actually happened?
Yes and no. I was actually, funny enough, I was speaking to Alex about that yesterday. And the interesting thing is, it's a little bit like trading, right? So after I defied those odds of, you know, being past the statistic of where most people would give up, they wouldn't really persevere, I kind of instinctively already knew, look, to do this in trading, I almost feel like some people have a better chance in business than trading sometimes. Like, you could open a bakery or something and probably have a better chance, or you could open a golf shop or whatever it is. Trading is very difficult because of the emotional volatility of how well you mentally have to perform. So I kind of looked at it like, well, if I could do that, the more difficult side of it, surely I can run a business because I've treated my trading like a business and then done other businesses. So I would say I kind of expected it to happen, and not in an egotistical way, from a planned and deliberate way, that why wouldn't I? You know, if I done that, I knew I could do that. But I would say the feeling is almost pinching yourself. I'm just kind of looking around. I'm looking around my house and I'm thinking, I have to remind myself constantly, it happened. I done it. Like, everything's there. And I think what tends to happen when people don't have a goal further than that, which I think is the big destroyer, which is a good point to talk about right now. If you don't have goals further than your goal, it will destroy you. We saw things like, for those of you that are into martial arts, boxing, etc., Tyson Fury, right? What an incredible mentality that he has and what he's won and what he's achieved. Yet we've all know the story of what he went through, the depression, he wanted to take his life, like all these type of things. It just shows you. And what he spoke about, really interesting, which I'm so grateful that I instinctively knew, was you have to have something further than that. Because if your goal is to do this, and then you do it, you almost lose a sense of urgency and purpose that, well, I've done everything now, so what's the point in doing anything else? And then it goes the other way. It's almost anti-climax, where you then feel deflated. I'm glad I've kept that fire burning to the point that, right, we've hit the 5th year anniversary, and I feel like we started Falcon a week ago. From all the plans we've discussed, etc. Do you see what I mean? That's how it feels. And I'm glad I've done that, because that's what's kept that fire burning. And then now it's going to go even bigger than what we've done. So just quickly, guys, if you're enjoying the content that we put out on the channel, make sure that you stay in the loop by commenting, subscribing to the channel, turn the notifications bell on so you're always in the loop of the content that we're pushing out on a regular basis. We appreciate the support, and make sure you utilize the resources that we put out. So check all the links in the description. They will help you out massively on your trading journey. Right, now back to the video.
I think, you said so many great things there, and there's a few things that stood out. One of them was, and I'd be curious for your opinion too on this, Ibby, was the part that you were saying it takes a lot of emotional decisions, right? And between businesses and trading. And I think you're spot on, because I think in a lot of areas of life, you can kind of put a lot of things on autopilot. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of get to a point where some level of infrastructure is enough to keep on going, whereas in trading, like, you take your like, you lose focus for just a bit, and all of a sudden you've missed positions, you're tilted, you're taking all these things. And I think I've always found it rather interesting, because you approach social media, and like, not to take away any glory from anyone, I understand everyone that I seem to see on social media is a billionaire and all, and fair enough, but simultaneously it's like, everyone wants to tell you it's robotic. Everyone wants to tell you, like, it's just, stats, and which is fine, fair enough. Like, I agree with the logic. I don't disagree with that. But I think there's a tad level of like, and I guess maybe this question is also to you, Mark, of seeing that over the years as social media has become more dominant now, in terms of like how much people claim they don't allow emotions to get to them, like, I refuse to believe a lot of people would have a fight with their boyfriend or girlfriend and just trade perfectly fine. Maybe if that's your common thing to happen, fair enough. But if it's an out of their event, I just don't see it, and that's without, like, I don't know, both of you, what's kind of your opinions on that?
I'll be keen to hear your thoughts on that first, Ibby.
Yeah, like I said, I don't believe it either. Like, at the end of the day, we're emotional beings that tend to rationalize things, right? So we can't ever block out emotion. There's no such thing as, when people talk about mechanistic trading, systematic trading, your system should already account for that, but you can't systematically trade as an individual in its entirety, because we have emotions that we're dealing with. So I find that the best traders tend to not block out the emotions, but they witness them, they don't judge them, they leave them at the door before they actually make a trading decision. So it doesn't actually influence the decision. And then people that can repetitively practice that don't actually allow their decisions to be emotionally driven from trade A, B, C, and D and onwards, right? So I definitely disagree as well when people say that they just trade emotionlessly, or their entire trading is just purely mechanistic. I'm sure, Mark, you've had a lot more experience. You can probably see the sort of peaks and troughs over people's trading journeys. And like you said before, dealing with a business in the trading industry, it's more emotionally volatile because of the customer base you're dealing with as well, right? Because people come with all different sorts of personalities. People say one thing, people say another thing. I'm sure you dealt with people like that before. What's your experience been like on that?
Yeah, the most volatility out of all of it, as you just hit the nail on the head. That's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this, because I could see that a mile off, that people's issues wasn't always necessarily technicals from that respect, because there was still, even when I started, there were still other strategies that could perform, right? However, I could tell, like, you speak to someone for 2 minutes and mentally they wasn't there. And I was searching, racking my brain for a long time, thinking, surely I can't be the anomaly. I'd met a lot of traders. Like, I'm not the only one. There's other good traders out there. But you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how many people still didn't have it. And when you ask them simple questions, well, what's the vision for you? What's your goals? What's your plan in the next year? They haven't got a clue. And no wonder they don't get results. Is because the universe has a funny way of stopping you achieving your goals when you're not clear. Like, when you don't know what's happening after the fact, and you just kind of like, I'll just go with the flow. Those people don't achieve shit. They don't achieve anything. That you have to know where you're going, and it has to be clear if you want to be successful. If you want to be like kind of successful and get a little bit of results, of course you could passively learn and say there'll be someone out there thinking, well, I'm getting results, I don't have longer term goals. Of course that can happen, but hyper successful people don't do that. They're very clear, and they know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. I think that's the part of it. But yeah, you're 100% right. The emotional volatility of human beings that I've seen on one day say that they love Falcon, and the next day they hate it. Like, literally that polarity of like the complete other side, but like bipolar, to the point that it's quite scary how emotionally volatile and influenced people are, which actually gives me more of a challenge. And that was the point that prompted me to create Rewired even more, right? Because I psychologically already knew that at the beginning, but I didn't realize how bad people really don't know themselves. You will be surprised how many traders need that alpha male They don't have it. They don't have that guidance. They don't know anything about inner circle. They don't know anything about boundaries. They don't know anything about standards, making things non-negotiable, routines. I mean, the list goes on of things we've spoken about in Falcon for 5 years that, in my opinion, makes up a well-rounded, just business person that can cope with all of these things. They don't have it. So then we have to go deeper into like the trading psychology of how that all links together. So for me, I've seen it and I don't see that changing. I'm sure you've experienced it now that you're coaching people even more.
100%. That's what I was going to mention just then, is that I've started implementing that a lot on the coaching calls, just briefly, with certain students that I know have more sort of psychological issues, so to speak. And it's very, very funny how when you just phrase it a little bit differently, they actually extract information entirely different. So a lot of the guys I've spoken to have already purchased and gone through Rewired. But all we did was, I was like, okay, well, you've seen your trading weeks now. You can clearly see there's a root cause issue to your performance here because of a psychological reason, whatever that might be. It might be they're holding a mental image of what their future is like.
Exactly.
They've got pressures in their life and they're bringing forward that mental image every single time to see a trade, right? So a winner or a loser is essentially a gateway to that future image to them, psychologically. And so I'm like, okay, what you can do is, now that you know what this image is or what particular issue you're dealing with, go through the modules selectively now and then handpick which modules fit that particular issue. And then there you go, the magic happens, right? Where they didn't actually think of that before. So it's not just about having content there, watching it and taking note and going forward with it. It's handpicking, and it again is building self-awareness to see what issues have I got, and then I can handpick and select to see those issues solved within this series here. So there's ways to use it and there's smart ways to use it. When you use it in those ways, and when you build creativity in terms of how you do those things, you see a massive array of things appear for you.
100%. I find it so fascinating, and I'm sure I'll be curious to hear your opinion on this, Abdu, how one person can see something and someone can see something entirely different. And the core for me just comes down to the extreme ownership of just making do with what you've got versus this average mind that is always searching for something extra. It's why we ask these questions as to what's that one thing. Understand where that psychology comes from. What's that one thing? What's the 3 tweaks that you made? Like, think about that. It's that core of what is actually in front of you, right? We need to start getting better at asking better questions as to what do I have in front of me and how much do I know it? That's not the topic of a conversation. It's always, what more can I add? What can I be doing differently? Versus, what about what you've already got? How well do you know that? And that's not the thought process. It's not normal to think like that. So for those of you listening, I mean, don't judge yourself too hard. You have to train your mind to actually think like that in the moment, to go, wait, what have I got in front of me? How well do I know that? And what else more do I need to know of that first? As they often say, right? Success is not about doing extraordinary things. It's actually about doing ordinary things in an extraordinary manner, which is how well do you know the basics? It's kind of like phrased the same way. Curious to hear your thoughts on that, Abdu.
I mean, it's a big one. Funny enough, I'm going to go out of character here, and like it relates to 2 things. One is experience. I was going to make a gym comparison, which I know I hate myself for doing right now. But
well, I've got a driving one for you next.
Seriously, right? But what is something that people that actively go to gym got right is they understand they just have to keep repeating the reps and that's it, right? And it's not even probabilistic anymore. Like, you tell them, hey, what's the super diet, or hey, what's this, or what did you? They're like, dude, go an hour a day, do your reps, do them in form, exactly. proper till failure. Somewhere between 1 to 3 years, you'll get your body, right? And like, depending on whatever macros and stuff. But it's very simple in that way, right? And if you try to ask them what's that one thing, they'll just look at you like you're stupid, right? They're like, dude, I can't ask you how many sit-ups until abs, and you're like, yeah, man, 5,012, and that's it, you got it, right? And it's a countdown. And trading is also similar, but the difference is there's actually certainty in the gym, right? Like, if you do enough bench presses or variations of whatever, right, you will eventually get the pecs you want or whatever with the right nutrients, of course. In trading, it's rather interesting because now you're doubling down on that emotional side and as well as the probabilistic side, right? And this is the part I've always found interesting, because if you take into consideration like average household income, where people come from around the world, experiences growing up, beliefs, that's the part where I find it kind of rather interesting. Everyone's kind of ignored all that. And it's like, why do you believe what you believe? And I don't mean like some big religious part. And honestly, you can even consider religion, right? Like if you say someone, if someone's like, let's say born, and it's not a shot at any religion or anything, but it's like, if you're born into a religion, that is something you were kind of told to do in a way. Right. Exactly. And then you're like, yeah, you know, like I was born Muslim, right? It wasn't really a choice. I didn't come out to Jews. I was like, okay, hey guys, I'm going to choose Islam now. This was just like, hey, my entire family's Muslim. I'm Muslim, you know? So if you then at some point have a question of faith, for instance, and this is the same thing in trading, right? Or let's just say, can you actually have more money than 50K annually, you know, which like roughly the median salary in North America, and how to respond with that money, you know, when you've lived paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden you're trading a prop firm account and you get that one payout of 5, 10K, it's very different. And you're supposed to be neutral now and grounded. It's like, how is that possible? How can you now have such an influx and not respond to it? And when you now take that a step further and you look at all the intricate details of trading, right? Everything from understanding value areas to imperfect price action, to evolving with the market, to risk mitigation, to risk reward, to how to extract, to how to pivot, to stay neutral, all the things that are taken into consideration in a fraction of a second, that takes time to build all that up. You know, and that's the part where I think there's just a huge lack of love for experience. You know, and I'm completely at fault for this. I was that person too. Like when I was like 18, I thought I knew it all, you know, like, and maybe I was above average, like from a IQ perspective or whatever, right? So it did fuel my ego in that way. And I remember one particular person told me, it was like, hey, just like, he's like, you'll see it in time what I mean. You know, it wasn't a deep shot. It wasn't anything. It didn't humble me in the more traditional sense of embarrassing me or anything. It was just very calm and normal. And I was like, he's like, you'll value experience one day. You know, and I did, and, you know, looking back, and I was like, wow, I was such an idiot, seriously, you know, and, you know, it's normal for adolescents and stuff, but I think when someone asks you a question like, how did you know to place that trade, you know, and it's the thousands of hours coming back together in one moment, you know, and when you're only early on at like a couple hundred hours, I get it. It's annoying. Exactly as you were saying, each trade is a move forward or a move backwards. And yes, that's actually kind of logical. But it's also incredibly illogical when you think about it, because you don't actually know the value of each step. You know, like I could take a trade today. I don't know how much it's going to play out for. Like I can't actually know that ahead of time. I can have an idea based off metrics and stuff, but you won't know for sure. And if you extrapolate that same logic and kind of blanket to everything else, how do you actually know the quantitative value of each day in your life? You know, and how that's progressing. And so like, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but that's kind of the love I've had for experience over the years. And I'm sure you guys have too, you know, as you've appreciated more and more into your journeys.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, Abdu, like what you mentioned there, right? Through each step, what you build is character. And I think a lot of people don't actually understand this part, and we emphasize it a lot, right? I mean, webinars and everywhere is character. Because without that, how are you going to sustain the achievements that you're looking to achieve, right? Of course, Mark's here to talk with more experience, but when you scale up more and more capital, how do you know that money's not going to destroy your life, right? Sometimes these experiences actually shape you in a certain way, right? So when people go out on social media and talk about, typical struggles of a trader, they're not typical struggles of a trader. Everyone's got to go through that anyway. You've just got to toughen up. There's a lot deeper struggles that every individual has to endure, and they have to endure struggles that they're built for. So everybody has different types of struggles because they're built for different types of things, right? But the thing is, we cater for all of that, right? And I spoke about this in a read-only video recently, which to people listening might be a little bit controversial, but it's not just singularly community that's going to make you succeed. It's utilizing that properly, right? Utilizing people ahead of you with more experience. That doesn't mean that you belittle those on the same level as you, below as you, but you utilize your circle wisely, because if you don't, you're going to get sucked into the wrong voices, and those same voices will lead you into a hamster wheel you'll be on for the next 5 to 10 years. Right. And it's shocking to see, and this is a question to Mark as well, how you can find people build character over the years, so to speak. But yeah, they still get sucked into miserable circles and miserable environments that essentially detriment their trading. What are the sort of symptoms that you see with people that fall into that cycle, Mark?
Misery loves company. As we know, we've all probably heard that before. And we have this habit, and I see this across the board, we have this habit of listening to opinionated people without actually just looking at their life. And as most simple, remember, the quality of your life will be on the quality of the questions. Ask a simple question: does that person have what you want? If the answer is no, stop listening to them. It's the most simple advice. It's very Dan Pena of it, and he'll probably use a few more crude words, but you get the point. It's that simple. So what we tend to do is that we tend to flock towards, again, I think it goes back to the root of not having guidance and having that decisiveness to just make your own decisions, right? So then what do? If we're not comfortable doing that and we've not had that guidance or good mentoring friendship circles over the years, we tend to just listen to the next person who's got something to say without actually thinking, do they have what I want? Have they gone through what I need to go through? Are they going to be there? What's the value? What's the character? Is that going to rub off on me? And they just listen, and then they get brainwashed, and then they get caught up into these negative circles that they don't even realize that are toxic and negative at the time. And they're all the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And that is what the problem is. They're not actually with people further than them or have gone through that to do that. So the common traits is that they just don't ask good questions, and they're not observant or objective enough to actually ask the simple questions. They ask the complicated ones, right? Which is, why do you think most people are obsessed with wanting to trade the most mechanical edge? Like, think about it from a human psychology point of view. We're always searching for what? Certainty. And that, in quote unquote, gives us that element of certainty that we're after. Remember, certainty doesn't give you success. Do you think Elon Musk has certainty in his business, or he had it over the years? Do you think Jeff Bezos had certainty? Didn't have any certainty. He had a vision, passion. He gets on with it. And that is how success is built. You don't have certainty. And I think the more you search for it, all you're doing is just masking the insecurity of wanting this safety. You may as well just go work a 9 to 5. If that's what you really want, that's what you're actually asking. You're trying to get that out of the market, which the market is random. Like, you could actually trade something quite systematic for quite a lot of months. Like, I'm talking sometimes over a year, 15 months, and then it stopped working. How do you know in the moment that you're about to go through excessive drawdown? How do you know to pivot on the 14th month? You don't. Exactly. You don't. And I've seen that in this industry a lot.
100%, massively agree on that, because I mean, it just goes to show in the industry, people don't even understand basic psychology principles, right? If we go back to how we've evolved over the millions and millions of years, the basic thing that humans want and desire and crave for is certainty. So you're in a market now that's uncertain. How are you going to find certainty? Is by speculating or through a system, right? That predicates that. So if we try to understand that for a second, people don't even know that that's what their brain's craving. So they're not even working to rewire that thing.
Exactly.
If they can't even rewire their brain, how are they going to ever get close to any consistent success? And going back to what you said there with people aren't observant enough, I've had direct experience with it, as I'm sure Abdu has as well. As we come from being students, we still technically always will be students, right? A coach title doesn't necessarily mean we're not a student anymore. But of course, there was a point in time where I'm sure every trading business has experienced this or will yet to be experienced this, where people were dropping like flies out of Falcon, right? And at that time, I was not consistent. I had literally no reason to stay here. And my logic, which not had the best of me in times in life, but it came in, and I looked and I observed, and I thought, well, do you know what? None of these people are consistent, and neither am I. So why do I want to flock with the same group? So I looked around, I became observant, and I realized I made my own decision, right? And I've always listened to people that have taught me how to think, not exactly what to think. So I cannot become sort of indoctrinated. I can educate myself on how to think, right? And that led me to make a decision. And if I hadn't made that decision and followed my gut the same way I did when I left college, then I would have still been in the same group, not consistent, doing the same things over and over again, right? Now you fast forward time and I'm consistent. I've become a coach that I'm very proud of, right? Many other achievements with capital as well, investors, so many of the things that I wouldn't have achieved otherwise had I listened. So I 100% agree. I've directly experienced that. And to anybody listening, learn to think for yourselves, learn to think critically, but utilize people that are ahead of you to make those decisions. Because if you just learn to think of yourself with no basis, you'll make baseless decisions.
Of course, 100%. And I'm really proud that you actually had the mindset to deal with that in that time, because most people wouldn't, which is why people made that decision, and they're still not consistent. They still go around chasing the tail. It's a reason why this happens. And the even more reason why it happens, because you got to understand, imagine there's someone who's not consistent, who doesn't know something, and then they make an informed decision that, this doesn't work. Even though they've got hundreds of other people that are doing it and it works for them, they will make a decision, it doesn't work. So they will find other people that have that same insecurity, that have not built up that strength yet. So then they will attach onto someone else who has that same insecurity, going, do you know what? You're right. And then someone else will go, yeah, you're all right. And then you've got blind leading the blind. And they all think they're making a good decision because they all agree with each other. So it sounds logical. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. If you decide that you don't like something, your brain is always looking for validation to prove that to be true. So it's always going to find and search for what you've already told it, which actually works positively for us and negatively for us. You become, as what Jordan Belfort says, a shit magnet, right? Because you literally just attract it. So if you think, right, this doesn't work, you will find every reason to convince yourself that's why it doesn't work. And then you feel good about that because you're like, well, it's justified now. You know, it doesn't work, even though people in front of you are making it work. It's like, for example, we've got goals for those listening for the first time to have the 100 million fund, which is already a motion infrastructure built, right? What an achievement that is within itself. It's not a small feat. It's not just linking up with anyone and getting a referral. This is like a clear 100 million pound fund. And people see people trading like million, 2 million, 3 million this year and beyond and still go, nah, that doesn't work. People are crazy. It's because they can't observe and look at themselves in the mirror, because it's hard to go, no, I'm the one that didn't have the backbone. I was actually the one that quit. No one wants to own up and be like, you know what, I actually made a bad decision a year ago. Maybe that was the right place for me. Their ego will just mask all of that and go, nah, that doesn't work. Even when they see people like bank 100K, which will happen, they'll still go, no, it's not possible. And that's just the way that we live. And this is human psychology, which actually strives me more and pushes me more to actually create even better reputation for that. So then those people that have been misled can then see that for themselves and feel comfortable enough to say, right, okay, that was actually where I needed to be. This is where I'm going to go.
Yeah, because there's a lot more things you got to factor in aside of just how you trade, right? Of
course.
It's the people that you're around is a massive thing I think people don't understand, because what about, okay, your prime silver bullet here to learn to become a great trader is to learn off people who can trade well, right? So what about then when you scale up capital and you want to diversify your profits or your gains into certain investments, but you've got nobody in your circle that's got a clue in the world how to do that because they've not built up any wealth at all, then what? You're screwed, right? Totally. So I think, yeah, definitely say that's our obligation in the near future and beyond to sort of bring back that professionalism aspect into this industry, which seems to be like it's crumbling and falling. And I've spoken to many, many people that have gone astray and gone here, there, and everywhere. And coming from a neutral point, we're not saying we're, the only method to trade in the entire planet, right? But there's a lot more things to factor in for that, as I just mentioned, right? And when you look around, you can see the issues for yourself. But there's been people who've gone here, there, and everywhere, and they've always come back and said, well, do you know what? We still lost. And I was like, well,
exactly that. People have said to me before, isn't what you do quite basic? Tell me what's basic about banking 50K. Like, please, just tell me what's basic about that. Like, it's baffled. People don't understand what they're saying, because remember, our minds don't like things to be looking very simple and then get a positive result. It's like, surely it can't be that easy. It has to be a complicated algorithm to warrant extracting that. When the reality is the broker knows that and wants you to think that, because the more decisions and things you have to factor in, the more margin for error. So if you have to trade 3 times a day or check the trade every blimmin' hour, right, you would then fall into this category of probably making bad decisions over a long period of time. Over the whole year, you probably won't be that profitable because, again, as Abdu was alluding to earlier, what if you have an argument with your spouse? What if something happens? You're going to be affected emotionally to some degree. And then your system is predicated on you making quite a lot of those decisions. What's the chances that you make deviations? I'm not saying that you 100% will, but it's a higher chance of you doing that. And we're dealing in probabilities here. So you want to remove as much margin for error as possible. And by the way, looping it back to what we spoke about earlier, there's nothing wrong with anything mechanical. You kind of want as much of a black box system as you can make it. Who wouldn't want that? Even myself, which is how we trade anyway. But you need a slight element of actually having your experience as to what the market is showing you in that unit of time, because price action is unique to be able to trade it.
Yeah,
that's the key thing there. You don't want this trading off of your intuition and being like, oh, I've seen that candle, I'm going to just take this random trade. Like, what we do is very systemized, but you need that small element of experience to be able to interpret that bit of price in that unit of time, because guess what, in 5 years from now there will be more variations, and anything that is just so rigid will eventually collapse, and you'll need to evolve it anyway. So rather than going through that really horrible period of like doing well for a period of time and then not being able to pinpoint when something shifted or changed, and then go through 6 months of drawdown. That's emotionally damaging, and it knocks your confidence. Imagine you make 100% a year, and then you had to go through a 6-month period of drawdown because you couldn't put that on yourself to be able to pinpoint when something was going to change, and then you had 6 months of bad results. Tell me anyone who's going to be confident after that. They could have made £1 million, and if after that for 6 months of making nothing, that would knock anyone's confidence. So that's why I'm a big fan of not obsessing over returns, like obsess over finding the right consistent route to get a positive return and then tweak and refine from there. That's the most important thing.
I mean, that part right there actually kind of hit it home for me, because that's like, I made that shift ages ago, probably because of your mentorship, and it was one of those things that, the word excuse, right? I've never liked it because I feel like it was a bit derogatory. Like it kind of puts the person down, like, oh, that's just an excuse, right? Maybe there's some truth to that. But the thing is that I'm sure everyone listening, right? What makes excuses good is they're actually like legit in the sense of like, I can understand, like, okay, I'll give a recent example, right? For those of you who may or may not know, my grandfather was very close to me, passed away recently, right? Now, I can understand if someone resorted to, let's just say, alcohol afterwards. I really do. I felt the pain. I was really sad and stuff like that, right? Or post breakup or whatever, right? Someone loses the love of their life. They go on to do drugs and alcohol. Is that an excuse? Because they're like, oh, like it's like, at what point does trauma and pain and obstacles in life go from the realm of like, that's just a shitty excuse to, I get why you're doing it. And I think a majority of the time, right? And I remember there's this one like picture on Facebook. It's one of those like motivational ones, right? And it was basically this CEO dude and then this homeless guy, and then they both responded, how, like, the question was, how did you become here, right? And the response was, my dad was an alcoholic, both of them, right? So they both took the alcoholic, likely abusive father and all that, and then chose their life based off those actions, right? Now, the homeless one, you could be like, man, you could have just made better decisions, right? I understand why he or she didn't. But simultaneously, when you look at stuff like trading and uncertainty and stuff, and as you were talking about earlier, we do want that certainty in our life, right? And in a way, like you could talk about like pension funds, which are already not performing well anymore at this point in time, post-COVID and stuff, let alone how the hell they'll be doing 20, 30 years from now. So banking on the system to save you in that way is not necessarily even guaranteed, right? And even cost of living, all those things, which I won't get into. So it actually became rather an interesting bet for myself, because I was like, okay, how can I give myself the most amount of certainty in the future? And I kind of played this mental game where I kind of put myself in a mental loop where I was like, if I were to repeat the same day over and over and over, what could I be doing that, mathematically speaking, I should come out ahead after an infinite times of playing this loop, right? And the reason I say infinite is because you won't have to play it infinite times. Chances are it'll just be a year or two or whatever. But like, let's just say, imagine you actually were trying to become consistent in trading and you dedicated 60 years for it, like seriously, 6 decades. It wouldn't take that long, right? But if you're hypothetically, you're showing up every day, you're actually asking yourself better questions, you're trying to improve, you will at some point break that loop. But the problem is people give up before the loop actually happens, and they justify it, whether it's, oh, my family or my bills, and all very legitimate like answers, but you have to want it above all that, and I guess to kind of shift the question back to both of you, and I guess maybe a tad more towards you, Mark, about kind of like the next 5 years of Falcon, because one thing that I've realized in being in this game and kind of the entrepreneurship side of things is, you think at some point, I wonder if you actually, and you can ask this on the side as well, as, did you ever feel like you'd run out of ideas? Because like from our team calls, I know we have so much more planned, and I've never in the recent times have had this feature of like, we'll never invent something new or improve or know it. There always is something. But I remember once upon a time, I was like, kind of scared that I'd have like this one idea, and maybe in a parallel, people think that like you catch that one trade that makes your trading career and you'll just never have something like that again, which has proven to be false. So kind of what's your outlook on that next 5 years, how you felt on it,
For me, very simple. I've never ever had that thought, and I'll explain why. Is because what's happening now with the fund and where it's going is playing out for that longer period. So for example, 2017, when I first started, people asked me, what's the future for Falcon? What does it look like for you? You can go back to older webinars. from day one, and you'll hear me say that it's not about the charts so much. It's not about Forex as a whole. It's what it can do for you after the mat. So let's say there's 100 people in the room at the time. And I say each one of you will have your own passions, own hobbies, everything that you like. This as a vehicle, what I'm teaching you, the guidance, the mentorship, psychology, everything puts you in a position to have a skill set for you to have options and choices. And when you have those options and choices, you can do whatever you want. So it's an infinite growth of like-minded individuals globally connecting with each other, of actually building a community. This is not building, let's get the best traders, so then we're in no contact with them. That's not what I'm looking to build. I'm going to be very clear with that. I'm looking to build a community of like-minded people that we actually meet up with each other. This is what life is about. Life is about not just you being wealthy. Like, what's the point of having, $20 million in your bank account, no one to share it with, no experiences, no friendship, no nothing? Eventually you will get bored. You'll think, well, I can do whatever I want. No, eventually you'll get used to the fact that you can have 17 Ferraris. Like the novelty will wear off very quickly. So I see it kind of further than that we have the opportunity to connect with people from over 100 countries in Falcon, and they all have different hobbies and passions and things they're creative about, positive change they want to do in the world. What we're providing here helps them do that and have the freedom to be able to accelerate that. What an exciting project to be involved in, that we're able to witness that. For example, someone might have a project that they want to clean up the oceans, for example, and then they're doing that based off of word of mouth, being part of an organization. Imagine you can make millions. Imagine you can make millions and you can actually influence that change on a mass scale. They say, oh, it's not always about money. Money talks and money makes impact, and it has power and it has influence. That's been around from day one, never changed, never will. So it's really about that. That is what excites me. And then being in a room of like, right, with the funded traders, for example, we're meeting in all different parts of the world, and one person's doing this, one person started this. We're all on the same page. We're all trading the same markets, and we're all being very wealthy together as a collective, but we all have these individual intricacies of what we're passionate about, and we get to almost maybe jump on that as well and help people. And I think that's the exciting part of that. I really want to be the pillar of hope for people, because look, we've spoken about a lot of things and people make mistakes. People are probably triggered by a few things, etc. But at the core of all of it, we want people to do well. As you said, like, look, the alcoholic example, some people make a good choice, some people don't, but you can kind of understand when some people just can't cope with that. Who is it for me or any of us to judge as to why you're a trader right now and you're just finding it difficult psychologically? You might have gone through some books, etc., but you're just finding it difficult. Look, not everybody is built the same, but just rest assured, if you just have a bit of faith and give it a bit more time, and people that have got your back and they're in your corner, it will play out for you if you just wait out that extra bit of time. It might be an extra year for you versus someone else, and there's no shame in that. But if you just give up and complain, well, then you guarantee a life of mediocrity. And what's the point in that? I will never settle for that. And that's the kind of influence that I want. So that's the future of Falcon, just leveling up everyone and making sure that they have options and choices to just do what they want with whoever they want, when they want.
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish off on that, you just reminded me of a point that I spoke of yesterday on the Instagram Live, which ties in nicely with the end of this podcast. Was I asked people why they're actually trading, right? And it seems like a very easy, simple question. And all the answers, 99% of the answers were time, freedom, wealth. That was it. Just really vague, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, I get it. Everyone's got different goals and stuff. And I'll never believe the fact that someone just wants to have an average life when they're in an industry like trading. I just can't settle for it, because an industry that's liquidating $6-7 trillion a day, you're telling me you want to settle for $100,000 or $300,000, really? Right? And people are like, oh no, but not everybody wants to aim high. Well, then why are you in an industry like trading for then? The fact that people are in this industry and they want to trade and learn this skill set is proof in itself that they want something different out of life. So the guys that sent the answers in of, I want time freedom. I was like, oh, okay. You get time freedom. You've got it now. What are you actually going to do in your time freedom? Don't know. Right? Okay. I want financial freedom. I'm like, okay, you're financially free. What do you want to do now that you're financially free? Don't know. Right? So a lot of this industry now is actually predicated upon just very, very vague goals. Right? And of course, when you get that specificity in your goals and you actually understand, okay, I've got time freedom, and in my free time, it might just be you want to spend time with your family. Right? Some people are just fine with that. Some people might think, okay, in my free time, as you just alluded to then, I want to focus on my other passions. That could be cleaning the oceans. It could be providing to the homeless or ending poverty in the world. My question is to people is, you've achieved these goals now, right? What is your money going to do, and how is it going to contribute to the world? How are you going to give back to the actual world itself? And people need to start home first before they can expand out. If you want to look to help people outside, help some of your family first, right? Then expand out. Be there for your friends, right? Build loyalty in your own circle before you want to expand out. That's a really important part. And if people can start to aim on those levels, they can start to see these things like consistency, getting fronted. It's just like a walk in the park.
Exactly.
Right? But because they're holding on such a massive pedestal, that's why they don't get it. So I've been saying for so long, same as yourself, is that if you're aiming to get consistent, you won't get consistent. You've got to aim beyond that, right? When you look back at consistency and profitability, it was single-handedly, in comparison to other things, the most easiest accomplishment. Obviously, it was difficult leading up to it, but in the bigger scheme of things, it's so easy. And people are just winding their heads over all different ways, trying to gain it. So you've got to aim far beyond that and really think, when you're at the end of your life and you look back, what change have you brought to the world? And trading can give you that.
100%. Very, very well said. And that is the key bit of wisdom right there. This is why I'm so inspired by what we have here as a collective, right? With the plans that we've got. Of course, we speak privately as well in our course as to what we're going to accomplish for the community. I'm incredibly proud of the group that we have, the individuals, the mentality they have. Even just on the 50th anniversary, we had, of course, the aftermath on all the tables. And what I was doing is I was kind of just like jumping in, listening in, just eavesdropping basically on a few conversations. But no, it was so good to sense the level of maturity. That's what I would say, as to how focused these guys are and how much they really want it. And when you hear that as almost a fly on the wall, we always talk about we wish students could be a fly on the wall. It was such a great experience to be a fly on the wall and see those conversations and see people actually wanting to dig deeper into someone's problems that's a little bit further. They might be slightly further than someone else, and they're able to assist them, say, oh no, I've experienced that. This is what I've done. And I think that is a beautiful place to take comfort in, that, wow, I've got people that have my back that I've barely met, because we often think that if we know someone for a long period of time, that would suggest loyalty, character, but it doesn't. Sometimes people that you've never even met, but you just met them online, have your back more than someone that you've known all your life. Yeah. And that's just the reality that we live in. So again, it just ties it back to this: watch people's actions, don't watch what they say. And if you can just take that, something I've even learned and that I've been guilty of at times, because I tend to look for the best in people and point those things out as much as possible. However, you have to watch people's actions, not what they say. Watch what they actually do. If you can take that into your life, you'll be so much clearer. But thank you guys, Abdu, Ibby. Thanks for jumping on. It's all in all, this is just a pinch yourself moment. 5 years in to where we're going, and I could feel it energetically. 2022 50th anniversary, just everything that's lining up now, and all the dots are finally connecting. And for now this year, I just want to see more and more people. Of course, the success of the fund keeps increasing, but I want more and more people to have those experiences where we celebrate, right, this person's had their 25k withdrawal, 50k withdrawal, etc. And what does it actually mean for that individual? Not just the money, like what does that mean for them now? Does that mean that they're now in a position to quit their job? Does that mean they're now in a position to help pay off the family's mortgage? Like, what does that mean? And I think that excites me more for those, and I'm sure you guys are as well.
100%.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be an incredible year, and it will continue to do so. Where it's honestly very honorable to be part of it, and I think that's more than enough to say on that point. But the lives that have changed and will continue to change has just been honestly incredible to see. Seriously.
100%. We're just literally scratching the surface, guys. So thank you all. Again, thank you for tuning in to this episode. We thought we'd just keep this kind of raw and free flowing, especially, 5 years is a decent period of time to build the right infrastructure for people's lives. And when I see things like university, etc., people just kind of jump into things because they think they should do it. Imagine being in a place where you can come in knowing nothing about Forex, have everything from the basics all the way up to trading on a virtual floor, and completely change your life. To me, that's an incredible achievement of what we've done at Falcon, to stay on the long game, stay focused on a vision. We've never got distracted, original ideas, not copy and paste, and we just keep moving forward. And I'm very, very humbled and grateful for the group that we have and the team that we have to keep driving that mission. So thank you for tuning in, guys. And to everybody in the trading space, just wait it out. Wherever you are in your journey right now, if it needs to take a little bit longer, just stay diligent, stay ruthless, stay relentless on your craft. Sometimes it's the smallest things that you need to adjust in your life, or in a circle or a routine, makes a bigger difference than what you'd think. So keep moving forward. Thanks, guys. Catch you in the next episode.